Please be seated. So a few days ago, Sally House, a parishioner here, she sings in our choir. She sent me the link to a public radio story she had heard earlier in the week. The program is called something Judgment. I can't remember. Has anyone ever heard of this program before? I'll get it for you. So anyhow, the particular story was of a rabbi who had lived in New York City. And he and his wife decided that they would move. They moved to a town in Nebraska. We have a few New York City folks there who are shaking their heads. Well, so anyhow, so they get to Nebraska and they're unpacking their boxes. The phone rings. The rabbi picks up the phone, and on the other end of the phone is this hostile sounding voice who says, "You're going to regret the day you moved here," and calls him this horrific anti-Semitic name. Well, understandably, the rabbi gets off the phone shaken and he contacts the police, and actually the police say, "Well, we got a pretty good guess about who it was that called you. He's a fairly notorious fellow who is involved in all kind of white supremacist movements, and yeah, he's a dangerous guy." And then they give him this advice: tell your children not to walk home from school in the same way every day. Welcome to Nebraska. So a few days pass, and the guy gets a big, thick manila envelope in the mail. He opens it up, and out spills all kinds of vile, hateful materials, just horrific, racist images and slogans, and just all kinds of awful things. And then at the bottom of the envelope, there's a business card for the KKK. Who knew that they had business cards? And he turns it over, and on the back, in someone's handwriting, are the words, "We are watching you, you scum." He calls the police again. The police come over and they take away the materials. I mean, can you imagine? Here's this man of faith who's moved his family. All he wants to do is be a good member of the community. All he wants to do is settle in there and practice his beliefs and be a person of faith. He's just looking for a community to be a part of it. And what he experiences is what? Is this hatred and this bigotry and even these threats. You just imagine how unsettling that must have been. The first lesson that we hear from today gives us Paul's final words to the Galatians. We've been listening to this letter to the Galatians over a series of weeks, and actually Paul's tone to them has been pretty chilly, pretty cold, because the Galatians, one of the earliest of Christian communities, the Galatians are in crisis. They're struggling about how to be community. They've got Jews and Gentiles who don't know how to be together as one body of faith, because there are long-standing animosities and deeply held prejudices and beliefs. And so, in a way, bigotry, certainly prejudice, judgment, condemnation, all of that's going on in this community to whom Paul writes. And what is upsetting him most of all is that the way they're behaving towards each other has nothing to do with the way that Jesus had behaved towards all the people with whom he met. Paul's saying, you guys just don't get it. It's not about law, it's about love. It's about the love that we're supposed to share with one another. It's about the love that God has for us, the love that God has for us all. So these final verses that we get today, Paul's beginning to shift his tone He's becoming a bit warmer. He calls them friends. And he's sort of shifting his focus from sort of the past and the crisis to moving forward and coming out of crisis, to sort of challenging them to move beyond just their rigid adherence to the law, to let go of their preconceived notions and their prejudices and their bigotry, and to be the community of faith that Jesus would have them be, that God is calling them to be. And so he says to them these words. If anyone is detected in a transgression, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness. Right? Take care that you yourselves are not tempted. Bear one another's burdens. Let us not grow weary in doing what is right. Whenever we have the opportunity, let us work for the good of all. Now, some of you have heard me say this before. I'm not a big fan of Paul's writings. Probably shouldn't say that, but it's true. But these words, oh, how they resonate. Think about these words and how they might reshape the way we make community. Whenever anyone transgresses, whenever anyone injures you or hurts you, restore them in gentleness. Gentleness. Bear one another's burdens. And when he says resist that temptation, what he's talking about is that temptation to self-righteousness. Resist claiming that sense of certainty and self-righteousness. But instead, try to do what's right. Try to do what's good. And try to do what's good for all. Right? Imagine how our relationships would be different. Imagine how our communities would be different. Imagine how the political discourse in this country would be different. Imagine how our globe would be different if we practiced the kind of community that Paul calls the Galatians to be. So the rabbi gets to thinking, and he decides he's going to call this guy. He's got a friend at the phone company. He gets the guy's number, and he calls the guy up. His answering machine picks up, and not surprisingly, the machine has a message that, again, is spewing hate. This time it's talking about how the Asians are leading to the decline of our country. So the rabbi leaves a message on the guy's machine, and he says, "Why are you so filled with hate?" The next day, the rabbi calls him again. And in fact, what happens is that the rabbi starts calling him every day at the same time, 3 o'clock, every day, leaving messages on this guy's machine, leaving him what he called little love notes, talking to this guy about love, and saying, "What happened that you're so filled with hate?" Every day, the rabbi called. The guy's so funny. He's like, "I suppose I was a little obsessed with this," do you think? Right? Every day he called. So a couple months pass, and it's Saturday night, the rabbi gets a phone call. Picks up his phone. The guy's on the other end of the line. And he hollers into the phone, "Why are you hassling me? Leave me alone!" A little bit of sort of turnabout there, right? So the rabbi says, "I'm not trying to hassle you. I just want to know what's going on for you." And then he said, the rabbi had heard that this guy was suffering from severe diabetes and was a double amputee, was confined to a wheelchair. And then the rabbi says to him, "Listen, I just want to know if I can help you. Would you like a ride to the grocery store?" So, dead silence on the phone. And finally the guy says, "No, I've got that covered. Leave me alone." And he hangs up. Well, so, we clergy, we can be persistent. So the rabbi kept calling. The rabbi called him back the same time, 3 o'clock, the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And kept calling, and kept leaving him messages. And then the guy calls back again. And he says, I want your help because I don't know how to stop doing what I'm doing. Will you come over for dinner? So the rabbi agreed, and he tells the response of his son, who says, Dad, when someone like that invites you for dinner, you're going to end up being the dinner, right? So the rabbi goes to the store and gets some chicken, and brings his wife. I promise I would never do that to you. And brings his wife, and they show up at the guy's door, and the guy with the chicken, with the food, right? And the guy opens the door, and there he is in his wheelchair. Resting in his lap is a gun, and hanging on the corner of the wheelchair is a shotgun. And the rabbi says, he thought to himself, oh my God, I'm going to die right here. The man holds out his hand. The rabbi takes it and embraces it. And the man just weeps. And the rabbi goes in, and the man tells him he just doesn't know how to stop. And he tells him a story. And the rabbi says, explain to me what's happened to you. And the guy tells him about having grown up in a household where hate and where violence and where abuse was common. And in fact, the only way that he could even sort of gain any favor with his father is if he spewed the same kind of venom that his father was talking about. And the rabbi and this guy would engage in a series of conversations. Eventually the guy said, I want to convert. I want to become a Jew. And the rabbi said, I called all my pastor friends and said, listen, do you want to be a Christian? And the guy said, no, you're the one that helped heal me. I want to be a Jew. And so he was converted to Judaism. And do you know that when he died, which was only about 9 months later, he died living in the home of the rabbi and his wife, who had invited him in to care for him in his last weeks of struggle. And the synagogue was filled with people who were there grieving his passing because this guy had spent those months trying to make amends for all the hate that he had spewed. That's what it means to be gentle with those who are our transgressors. That's what it looks like to bear one another's burdens. That's what it entails when it says, work for what is good and for what is right for all people. It can be done. Now look, there's not one of us who hasn't borne the brunt of some kind of transgression. And let me just say, I would guess there's not one of us who hasn't been a transgressor as well at some time in our lives. And even though Paul's letter to the Galatians speaks to a different context, I think it speaks to us still as well. Because isn't it true that it's so seductive when someone offends us and hurts us? It's so seductive to want to condemn them and demonize them. It's so tempting when someone thinks differently from us to judge them. It is so satisfying when someone acts differently from us to condemn them. But Paul calls us to be different, to be gentle, to bear one another's burdens, and to do what is right for all. That's what Paul asks us to do. Let me just say, that sounds just too much, too demanding, too hard. Let me remind you of something else that Paul says in his letter to